Well, I was able to get out in the garden because it dried up. And these things here take a heap of patience, but I actually made some Brussels sprouts this year.
Yeah, I did too.
And I'm trying to pick them off so everybody can see them a little better there.
One of the first years I know of that I have made a real good crop of Brussels sprouts, planted them in the fall. Memory serves me best, I planted them about the end of October. We've been eating Brussels sprouts for about 2 weeks now, but they're just getting real good maturity size. Them on the bottoms are getting a little too big there.
Yeah, I probably let mine, some of them go a little too long. I kind of
Well, you can't have it all. You can't have it all. So,
but that's a good full stalk of them right there. Now you go in your fancy grocery stores or whatever, and they'll sell them, you know, on the stalk like this. You buy them in a bag at the grocery store, they'll pick them off. For our vegetable bags, a lot of times we'll just leave them on the stalk, but we may pick them off this time because I need to cull a few of them there. I was not very confident that they were going to do well because they usually need a good shot of cold to trigger sprout production, but they did okay. And so we got those. I'll let you hold that one. And then this one that's the Jade Cross.
yep.
Now this one is the Red Bull Brussels sprouts. Now I got some that are a little more full along the stalk like that, but I just grabbed this one. It was easier to cut this morning.
Mine are fuller than that one is. Mine are not as spaced out as that one is there. However, I will tell you the Jade Cross seemed to have done a little bit better to me than what's the name of this, the purple one?
Red Bull.
Red Bull. The Red Bull didn't perform, and they grow them side by side, didn't perform quite as well to me as what this one did.
Yeah, this is more of a specialty variety. That's more of a straight production variety. Hence the differences there. But these red ones are nice and pretty. And if you was doing a farmer's market or something, this would definitely be eye-catching.
Sure. For the last 2 weeks, just about every meal, we have had Brussels sprouts. Now, the way we like to prepare them, our favorite way of preparing them, is put a little olive oil on them, cut them in half, put them in a cast iron frying pan, stick them in the oven.
That works. I'll tell you a neat way to do them. A buddy of mine that was a chef, and or still is, it would do them like this at his restaurant. So he would take a baking sheet and he would slather the bottom of it with bacon grease.
Yeah.
And then he would lay the Brussels sprouts on top of it. And he'd take one of them stone baking pans or something heavy and set on top of it. So it kind of smooshed them down a little bit and put them in the oven, and it basically fries them almost in that bacon grease there.
Some people would say that would be lard.
Lard, yeah. Either way, it's good that way.
That's got to be. If it gets any better than what we've been eating, I don't know that I want any of it. We love them.
Yeah, they are. If you've never had homegrown Brussels sprouts, they are quite delicious.
I don't know that I recommend it for the beginner gardener. It is somewhat challenging to grow sometimes, but I've done fine with them.
Now, I could have babied these more, and I could have actually took the tops off of them, probably got some more even sprout production there. It was one of them things I planted, and then I kind of got a little discouraged with it, and I kind of just didn't fool with them, and then next thing you know, turn around, you got something there, which is always a good little surprise. Yeah. So I've got those. I got the...
you didn't pinch the head out of those.
I didn't. Like I said, I should have.
I did.
There's one little sprout at the top right there. I should have pinched the head out of them. That does help kind of even everything out a little bit. So we finally dried up, and it doesn't look like we're going to have any rain again for the next 4 days or so. So I'm itching to plant.
A lot is fixing to happen around here.
A lot is fixing to happen. I'm going to plant squash probably today or tomorrow, followed by some beans, and I'm going to be getting some corn in the ground pretty soon.
Yeah, me too.
The commercial guys around here have already started putting peppers in the ground.
Yes, they have.
Now, they grow them on black plastic, which keeps the soil a little warmer, so they can kind of get away with that. But
yeah,
a lot of people getting ready to plant. I've had several people email me talking about they itching to get some corn planted. Can they go ahead and plant it? And I'd say, sure.
Yeah, zone 8, yeah, absolutely. A lot of people do some fancy garden planting. I know you've done that this year. You sat down at nighttime and drew off what you was going to do. A lot of other people do that. I have done it in the past, but didn't do it this year. What I do is bedtime planting.
Bedtime
So I
planting.
lay in the bed at night, we get ready to sleep, figuring out what I'm gonna do. This is what I'm gonna plant. I always have an issue every year, what I'm gonna do corn-wise, because I like to grow all these different stuff. I have not grown hickory king in a while, so I'm gonna grow me a big patch of hickory king.
You're not gonna grow any sweet corn?
I am gonna grow some sweet corn, but I'm gonna grow me a patch of hickory king field corn.
Well, you know, the good thing about them triple sweet corn varieties, and we'll do a whole show on sweet corn coming up, is that they don't require isolation. So you can grow some of those, you know, along, you know, in close proximity to hickory king. Don't have a lot to worry about.
I, for one, and there's some other people out there probably, not a lot, but I, for one, like to eat field corn on the cob when it gets ready, and they got a small window there. But taking that field corn and roasting it when it's on the cob, man.
Yeah, there is a little window there where you got to get it just right.
Yeah.
It can get too starchy on you.
Yeah, but I love that field
get
corn.
it just right. So I got hold, one of our customers, I think his name's Brian Basso. It's
Brian.
Brian, he lives around close. I think he's in Enigma or somewhere around here. Anyway, he comes by here about every Friday. And he was telling us that we're talking about compost and soil amendments and chicken manure, stuff like that. And he was telling us that Cotton Gin, not far down the road from us, had some pretty good stuff. And he said it was gin trash. And when I hear gin trash, first thing, you know, alarm kind of goes off. You got to be careful with pigweed because some cotton
I was
farmers-
not impressed. When he told us about it, I just kind of shook my head in agreement and everything. And he said, now you got to understand this is some good stuff. So
I went down there yesterday and picked up a big load of it. And I got 3 tons, pretty reasonable price, $18 a ton. I got a big old truckload of it for $50, which is a lot cheaper than anything else I've found around here as far as good compost.
And they look
goes.
like really good compost. They keep it turned. They keep the water managed on the moisture level. Keep it turned. Keep it going. I did stick my hand in there. It was still just a little bit warm, but it pretty much worked off.
Yeah.
For bulk compost, it was some of the best I've seen.
Which is good that it got warm at some point and kind of cooked those seeds. So the cool thing is they even gave us an analysis sheet right here. And what I did, I still got to go get some more. I put a whole ton per plot in my dream garden, which is 1,000 square feet. I put it on there thick.
You put a ton per 1,000.
Yeah. Now, based on this analysis right here, it says that there's 30 pounds of nitrogens per ton of that stuff. But since it's organic matter, not all of that's available right from the get-go. And I guess that's why they give you this number right here of 14.8 pounds of nitrogen per ton would be available for the first crop. You following that?
I am following. What I did there, it's a 1.48%, and they just moved the decimal on there.
Right.
Yeah.
Now that's a good bit. After I put a ton on there, I kind of looked at these numbers in a little detail.
Well, that's a little hot. It's a little hot.
But it doesn't. This stuff doesn't smell like the chicken manure.
No, but I think you could have got by with less than that.
I did too. I didn't realize it was that hot. I should have looked at some more detail. But anyway, we're gonna
use a little.
We're gonna till it in good, and it ought to be fine for some corn.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about squash a little later and why you might not want so much nitrogen for squash. Anyway, I'm really excited about this stuff. They got plenty of it. I can go get any of it anytime I want. It's going to really help my dream garden. This stuff's got potassium in it, phosphorus, even traces of sulfur, boron, a lot of micros. Really good stuff. And the reason I was looking for something besides that chicken manure, in my sandier plots, my older plots, it doesn't happen. But in that kind of clay or stickier soil, that chicken manure, even if it's tilled in good, if that stuff gets kind of wet, it just gets even stickier and kind of can become tough to work with.
Well, what this is going to do is going to increase the organic matter in your soil. That chicken litter, you're not able to put enough of it down there to have a big impact on your organic matter as you are with this.
This is also going to increase my drainage too a little bit. So good stuff all around there. And on my squash plant video that'll be coming out, I think this weekend, I'll show you some of that stuff, what it looks like. So excited about that. Let's talk about seed germination real quick. So I've had a lot of people telling me, a lot of our people we work with on YouTube, a lot of our customers, everybody out there has been talking, they say, man, I planted your seeds side by side with another company's seeds or some big box store seeds, and the difference in germination rate is and the germination time. There's just a big difference there. And I guess a lot of people just didn't realize they was planting sorry seeds. They just didn't.
Well,
they thought that was just normal, yeah. So it's been nice to hear that. We do take really good care of our seeds.
It doesn't happen by accident, folks. We put a lot of work and effort in to make sure we're getting fresh seeds, and we move a lot of products. So therefore, we don't have it hanging around. We rotate our stock. So just because you get good seed germination from us, don't mean it's going to happen from everybody else. Because we put a lot of effort in there making sure that you get good quality seeds.
Yeah, we always packing fresh seeds, new stuff. And if we did have a batch of seeds go bad, they get thrown away. We don't.
And if you ever have a problem, you can rest assured you can contact us and we'll take care of you on that. I can't guarantee you that we won't never mess up.
Right.
But I can guarantee you that we'll take care of you and we'll make it right.
That's right. That's right. I did a video earlier this week on stepping up peppers.
Peppers, we got peppers growing. I just planted some more earlier today.
And so in that video, I explained that we'd rather not step up anything if we didn't have to. The one thing we do step up is peppers. Most everything else we can take right from the trays to the soil. And a lot of people were commenting on the video and said, well, if you got to step up them peppers, why don't you just put them in the big pots to start with? And the main reason for that is space and that heat mat. You know, we only have enough room for 2 long heat mats in there, and with all the peppers we grow, you couldn't fit them all on that heat mat. So it's advantageous to grow them, especially like we did this year in the 338s. We can get all of our peppers germinated there. Another thing is you don't always get 100% germination with peppers. And so if we start them in the big pots there, and we get some that don't come up, you could end up with some kind of wasted
I actually
soil.
planted some in some 12-inch, our 12-inch cells that we sell in our seed start kit. And I planted some there this morning, put them on a heat mat just to see how they do, see how everything turns out. And I was looking at some of the germination on some of those peppers, and they were in the 90-something%. So we'll see. Shouldn't have any problem. To give you an example, this right here is sangria watermelons, which is the watermelon I'm gonna plant this year. And I planted these about 5 days ago. And you can see they still coming up, they still popping through right there. But for the watermelons I planted, I've gotten pretty much 100%.
Yeah, I'd say on that one, you still got some coming up, you close to 95%.
Yeah, so I did something different this year. I'm trying something, experimenting, trying to figure something out. All the commercial growers, after they dibble in their potting soil and put their seed down, they put perlite on top. They use that as a coverage on top of the seed there.
Instead of dusting it with more Pro Mix.
We've always used more Pro Mix, and they use this perlite. Now, perlite is a natural product. It's classified as a volcanic glass, and it's mined out of the soil in certain regions of the world. And this stuff here is a major component of most potting soils. But they use this perlite on top for the seeds. I never understood it. So I'm gonna test it, see if it makes a difference. So far, I hadn't been able to tell a huge difference there. But if we got any commercial growers out there and you know why the primary reason they use this perlite for top dust on seed, I'd definitely like to have your comments or your insight on that where we could know. The only thing I can come up with is that it's easier for that seed to push through. It's very light and porous, and it doesn't compact. That's the major benefit of this perlite. It keeps the soil medium from compacting. So I think the being able for that seed to easily push through and get out is the major benefit, but I'm not sure.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
The biggest thing you think about when you're talking about soil seed germination is normally you don't want that seed to have access to any oxygen or any air. You want it to have full soil contact and full moisture contact so that it doesn't dry out and you have better germination there. That kind of goes across the grain a little bit with this perlite, because with the perlite being porous, you're going to get more air down in there around that seed. Everybody does it. Seems to have worked good so far. I don't know.
But everybody we ask around here, they don't know why they do it.
They don't know why they do it. So I'd like to know why. What's the purpose behind it?
We're gonna have a heap of sangria watermelons. I'm excited.
I got 3 of these planted, so I'm getting ready to plant I'm getting ready.
You gonna grow 3 flats watermelons?
I am. I'm gonna plant some 100-foot rows of it. I'm excited about this sangria. It's classified as an all sweet, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I've never grown the sangria.
Big old, it's gonna be bigger than your crimson sweets now.
Yeah, I've never grown it before, so I'm
when
excited.
You sit down by the tree to eat one every afternoon. I don't know if you can finish a whole one.
Oh, I can too. I have me a belly ache. But watermelon dirt is the next couple of days is going to be getting ready. It's wet now. I hope it dries out by maybe the weekend, and I can get out there and finish getting it prepared.
And we got to get we're doing another big seed crop of Cherokee tans. We got to get ready, and I got a special winter squash variety lady sent me called Algonquian squash, and really excited about trying those. So
I've had a little bit of issue in the last couple of years with disease in my watermelons, so we're planting my watermelons on new ground this year.
New ground, that'll work good. One more thing. So we had your little sauerkraut accident a few weeks ago, and so what I did was I went and, you know how I am, you go big or go home. I could have bought me a little old crock, or could have did a mason jar. I went and bought me one of them 5-gallon big old crocks. And I had a bunch of cabbage, them old big old cabbages.
Yeah, them old big old cabbages.
A bunch of them that I picked before I turned that area in, and I had them in the fridge. I need to do something with all these cabbages, so I'm gonna make some sauerkraut. And I got some going now. I took it easy on my salt. I went with, I had found online said 3 tablespoons or 3 teaspoons. I can't remember what it was, but 3 small spoons per 5 pounds of cabbage. Now them cabbages I had was more than 5 pounds, but just to be on the safe side, on the salt side, I went with 3 per head of cabbage, and we cut up, I think 4 heads of cabbage and put in there. And my wife
How long ago has this been?
Shoot, this was for last Friday we did this.
So it says in 2 weeks you can try it. Should be made.
Yeah, it's still got another week or two, but it wasn't but a day after we did it. It was already, the water was up there.
Yeah, it should be. You got a weight on it, pushing it.
Yeah, I got the kit with the weight and the lid and the full meal deal. Now, I'm trying to bring it to the show, but that's some goodness heavy.
Well, bring us some of the finished product anyway. And if it turns out for you, I may have to borrow your big doohickey to do it. I wasn't able financially to buy one of them.
Yeah.
So I wasn't able to do. I had to do the smaller one.
I'm gonna do me some carrots in there. I'm gonna try me some fermented carrots.
I've never heard
and
of
my
that.
wife wants to do some pickled onions in there.
Oh, now that'd be good.
So we're gonna play around with it, try it out, and we'll get the hang of this fermenting here. They say you can take that juice from making that sauerkraut and just drink you a little bit of it every day. It cure what ails you.
Woo. You know, in this day and time, and I don't want to get into this very heavy, but we're having a little bit of an issue with food scare and other things scaring us right now, and we're worried about being prepared. I can tell you this much, I feel as comfortable as anybody out there about having enough put back to take care of ourselves. Now, if it comes down to it, we're all going to be in a lot of trouble if things get really, really bad. But when it comes down to food storage, I just don't panic about it because we do canning, we put stuff up, we know we have the talent or the knowledge how to grow our own food. So I feel in these troubled times, I feel a little more comfortable than probably some other people out there do. Just going to leave that out there as that. And if you are worried right now, we all worried a little bit, but if you have the abilities to grow your own food and put your own food up, it takes a little bit off of you there. All right, let's move along.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I got plenty to eat in my garden right now. We got plenty of seeds. I can plant more stuff. Now, I may have to go down the pond and wash my rear end if we run out of toilet paper. But they talking about what we're going to do. But besides that, we're going to have plenty to eat.
We're going to have plenty to eat.
We're going to have plenty.
And I ain't got to go nowhere to get it.
That's right. All right, so tonight's big topic we're going to talk about, which is very timely, we're going to talk about summer squash. We're going to leave winter squash out of it for now.
Just I think that's a good plan.
Just talk about summer squash because there's plenty to cover there. We talk about, varieties, fertilization, pest control, everything. Because summer squash for us is the first, not really count potatoes, which speaking of, I got taters coming out of the ground. Summer squash is kind of the first warm weather crop we like to plant. We kind of have our own schedule. We like to get squash in for anything because if you got good fertile soil, you can have squash producing in 30 days a lot of times.
30 to 45 days, according to how much heat units you get, yeah.
But pretty quick.
Yeah,
so we like to get those going and churning.
And it always happens every year. Those first squash come in are so good. And we do succession planting. I had them come in all the way last year to July. They're not as good to me after I gorge myself out on them a few times.
Right.
But those first 3 or 4 harvests we get off those things, man, I love those fresh squash. Fresh squash is one of the easiest things to grow out there. I think everybody should be growing summer squash.
Mm-hmm. And I had a fellow in Middle Georgia was asking, "You planting squash already?" And he was up around Perry, and I said, "Yeah, man, this is right time." And he had said something about, "Well, ain't you worried? What if you get like a late freeze or something?" Well, if you do. You just go.
Well, we're going to plant some more 2 weeks later anyway, so it's just part of our succession thing. If you're going to get hit every now and then, you just get hit
if
and go
you don't
on.
take risk, you don't ever get the reward.
Yeah. It's always kind of like a bragging thing around here, who has the first squash.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That's right. So
Squash are one of those things that you need to have some natural or some honeybees. You need to have some natural pollinators, but they do take pollination by an insect.
So we'll plant squash now, and then we'll usually get 3 or 4 rounds of squash in before the squash bug pressure gets real bad. So we like to succession plant them. Let's talk about different types of summer squash and what we have to offer here. And I'm trying to kind of categorize these. So I had them sorted out. Just a second here.
We got lots of squash. I was back there showing some boys the other day how many squash varieties we had.
Okay, let's start off. Let's start off with the patty pans.
Yep.
And if you ain't never grown patty pan squash, man, these are the ticket. They got a little more texture to them than a straight neck or a crook neck. They are a little more nuttier flavor, in my opinion. Now, this sunburst has been a favorite of ours for years and years and years, way before we started.
I plant sunburst every year.
You can't go wrong with this sunburst. Now, last year, I grew this heirloom variety, this Benning's green tint. And one would think that this sunburst being a hybrid has a little higher production on it. But I tell you what, this Benning's green tint produced and produced and produced. It's a really good one. It's just a little different color on it. They kind of taste the same, but that light green color, it adds some nice little...
I've never grown the green tint before. I always grow the sunburst, and it makes a wonderful squash for sauteing because there's no waste there.
Yeah, I got a video out there, a 2-minute tip showing. A lot of people say, "Well, how do I cook these things?"
Ooh.
Just cut them up in little wedges and
I could eat a bowl full
some
of them
bacon
right now.
and some onions and stuff in there. So those are patty pan. You'll also hear them called scallop squash. It's always good to have a few of them in the garden.
Yeah, now let's say this right here about these. Now, you don't want to plant just these. You want to plant these in conjunction with the zucchinis and the regular yellow squash you're going to plant anyway. I'd never plant just all this, one of these varieties here. I always plant my yellow and my zucchinis, and I plant me a few of these.
Mm-hmm. Now, on them, a lot of people make the mistake, they'll let them get big around as a personal pizza there.
Yeah.
You want them about that size right there, no bigger than that.
When you see a bloom on that plant, you be hunting you some squash about a day and a half, 2 days after that. They're going to be about ready to pick.
Yeah. You need to get your buckets ready. The other kind, before we get into more traditional types, we got the 8-ball here. This is a round one. Now, this is actually a zucchini.
I didn't realize
we call it 8-ball squash, but I'm pretty sure it's related more to the zucchini. These are good too. These are round ones. And you take these babies and you just cut them in half and you put them on the grill. You can stuff them. You can do all kind of good stuff with them. But I really like these round ones as well. It's always good to have a few of those in there. Now let's get into kind of
the traditional ones.
The more traditional stuff.
The ones everybody's used to.
So let's start off with yellow, our straight necks and crook necks. So the one, probably the oldest one out there, this old early crook neck squash right here. The old bumpy skin one.
The bumpy skin, we get a lot of people that has asked for this particular squash here. 30 years ago, this is the only one we knew of.
Now, in this one, it's not as a bright yellow color as some of the hybrids are. It's more kind of yellowish orange. It's got that bumpy skin on it. Granny come by the other day and I tried to to get her on some of these hybrid ones. She said, nope, this is one I like to grow right here. A lot of people.
A lot of old timers, you can't talk them out of that one.
So we got that one for those of you who like that old tried and true bumpy crookneck squash. Then we got this one, which is it has been around for a while and it's a favorite of many. This is your smooth crookneck there called Gentry. And this one's been around for a long time. Really good producer on this one. These puppies got 98% germination rate.
Yep.
So you're gonna get your money's worth out of those.
And when you plant these things, you get good moisture and good temperature, they'll come out of the ground in a hurry.
Yep, in a hurry. So what we'll do, as I show in my video, we'll lay that drip tape and we'll just put a seed on top of every emitter and they'll come up in no time. So we got the Gentry and then we got an improved smooth crookneck that's got a lot of disease resistance to it, and that is this Gold Star right here. And that's the one old Trav is going to be planting.
That's a good one to plant in your succession planting later in the year. So if you start out with some of these other varieties, and the later you get, you want to switch up to some of these varieties that have these disease packages on them. Because we do notice we get a little more disease and insect pressure the later we go.
And then this last one here, which I'm going to probably grow again, and I had a lot of people say last year, and this ain't really a word, but that this was the makingest squash they had ever seen. So a lot of people who was used to growing the old school crookneck grew some of this gold prize straight neck, and I'm telling you, you about got to pick it every day.
So I had a fellow in the seed room the other day, and we was talking about squash. He was about my age, and he knew all about the crookneck. He was mature. And he told me, he says, you know why the grocery stores prefer the straight neck nowadays over the crook neck? I never thought about this. There's way less waste with that squash there than there are with the crook neck.
Yeah, and you can package them a lot easier.
You can package them a lot easier. The farmers always had a problem with those crook necks, the end breaking on them when they was packaged.
Right.
Because they was very tender and they just wasn't straight. It was just a problem. But this variety right here is your go-to variety now in your grocery stores, your commercial guys. Not as much waste. They pack better. Good squash.
I tell you what, that little crook on the end of them crook neck ones, them little tiny pieces is fine for frying if you like fried squash.
Yeah.
But
we normally plant squash. It says 18 to 24 inches on the pack. I normally do it anywhere from 1 foot to 2 foot.
And just let them sprawl out that way.
Sprawl out, yeah.
But that we had a good time with that gold prize last year. I would highly, highly recommend that one. Let's talk about some zucchini. We got lots of zucchini. Let's get on these gold zucchinis first. Got two of these, one we had last year and one of the new ones. So we had this Golden Delight zucchini last year. That one did really well for us.
Yeah, it produces well.
Big producer. And then we got a new one called Golden Zebra, which is similar to Golden Delight, except it's got some white stripes on it. So just a little different appearance there if you want something a little more eye-catching. And then green zucchini. That to help me here. We've got the two spineless varieties. We've got the Spineless Beauty and the Spineless Supreme, and then this one called Pascola. So
now, what is the difference between the Supreme and the Beauty?
So the Supreme has a little more disease resistance to it. This one costs, I think, $1 or so more a pack. It's just a little more higher quality breeding went into it than the...
Yeah, it's also got 45 days to maturity, so it's an early mature compared to the Spineless Beauty, which is at 50 days.
Right. So I grew the Spineless Beauty last year and did awesome with it. I really liked it. This year I'm gonna try this Spineless Supreme. I also have this Pascola here. So both of these two have excellent disease packages.
So this is OP.
No, it's a hybrid as well, and it's got some disease resistance as well. These two were resistant to everything under the moon. That one's resistant to most of your common stuff. So three good options there. You can't really go wrong with either one.
93% germination rate.
Yep. 98 on this Pascola here. All right, so we covered the varieties. Let's talk about fertilization real quick. So I talked about adding in all that gin trash in there. I looked up just kind of a general rule. Squash is going to like a complete fertilizer for the most part. Anything that's relatively balanced. A 20-20-20, 10-10-10, If you're just growing a few squash plants, you can't go wrong with this stuff right here. This pelleted hen manure, which is a 5-4-3. This right here, even though it's just 5-4-3, don't let that scare you off that it ain't got much in it. This is some
Powerful stuff.
Powerful stuff.
What happens most time with squash is it gets ahead of everybody. It's such a fast grower. We're talking about 45 days on most of these varieties from time you plant it to maturity. And most people get behind the 8 ball on fertilization. You got to have that fertilizer out there when that plant needs it, and that plant is going to need it quick because it's going to grow off quick.
Right. So you either want to put something down at pre-plant or pretty soon after that seed germinates. Now, the general rule for squash on nitrogen, and then everything else would kind of follow that, is 1.5 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. And
that's total nitrogen requirement.
Yeah.
That's fairly low feeder. That would be classified as a low feeder in my book.
Now this number is considering you don't have anything out there. So if you grew like a nitrogen fixing cover crop, you'd take some of that away. Because if you get too much nitrogen on squash, you grow in squash plants and not squash. So this is assuming fairly unfertile soils. Now if you've got some, like I said, you've had a nitrogen fixing cover crop, or you mixing in some manure.
Yeah. Or good compost.
Good compost, you can dial that back a little bit. So 1.5 pounds of total nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. If we figure that up with our 20-20-20, that would come out to 7.5 pounds of 20-20-20 per 1,000 square feet.
1,000 square feet, in case you don't know it, folks, is a heaping lots of squash.
Right. So you can dial that back depending on what you have.
I normally plant me 1 row at a time, and I say 1 row, I'm talking about, oh man, 15 to 20 feet at the most at a time with my succession planting. So I won't plant more than 1 row. So
now
you're talking about, just say 20 feet at a row at 3 foot. So you're talking about 60 foot.
Yeah, so you don't need a whole lot of fertilizer there. But that whole 7.5 pounds, it's better if you can break that up a little bit, spoon feed them a little bit if you can.
And if you plant them in raised beds, which squash is fine to grow in a raised bed.
Mm-hmm.
This stuff right here is the cat's meow. Incorporate it in a week before you plant. Do a little side dress after it comes up, maybe about 10 days after it comes up. That's pretty much all you have to do with this particular one in a raised bed.
Yeah, if you just, I'd say if you grow in 5 or less squash plants, this right here, and all you got to do, like I said, just scratch it in the soil a little bit and you're good to go. Now let's talk about the bad guys. Disease, pests, stuff like that. So squash and all cucurbits, they're going to be susceptible, as you like to say, to powdery.
I don't do as well on that word as you did, but
powdery.
Prone to.
Right. Powdery downy mildew is going to be a problem, especially if we have a lot of moisture. One way to solve that is to grow some of these disease-resistant varieties like we had. If you live in a humid climate, I would certainly recommend growing a disease-resistant variety. You'll have a lot of success. Having healthy plants also helps battle some of that stuff.
Yeah, also drip irrigation and not having overhead watering on that plant helps. If we get a lot of rain, there's nothing you can do about that, but you can minimize the exposure to these downies and powdery mildews by doing that drip irrigation, putting that water right underneath the plant instead of putting it on a leaf.
Yeah, because if you know what you're doing, you can mess around and grow you a squash plant big as this studio right here. And having that drip right there, feeding it all, is the ticket. Grab those 2 right there for me. Talk about disease control just a little bit. So we have 2 main products here. One is an organic product, one is not. So we got the Liquid Cop and the Monterey Disease Control. We'll be talking a lot about these as we get into pest and disease season, so to say. So both of these are fairly comprehensive fungicides for your garden. You can basically put them on anything. The copper, like I said, is what we call a synthetic product. The disease control is a naturally occurring bacteria and organic product. I will use both.
Yeah. This product right here also works well as a soil drench. And I did this last year, never done it before, but I made me up a soil drench in a 5-gallon bucket, and I drenched particularly my tomato plants and some of the other things with a soil drench, and that helps a lot with your root diseases such as pythium and whatnot. There's a lot of them in there.
And whatnot disease
is bad. This right here helps build up some beneficial colonies inside of your root system there. It helps fight off a lot of those diseases. One of the main benefits, I had Wendell, which works for Monterey, comes by and sees this every now and then. He was explaining this to me. One of the main benefits of this product right here is it's soil drench.
So, which means you could also run it through your injector. If you got your drip out there, run it through your injector and have a little bit of, get the jump on them. Have a little preventative out there. That's not a bad idea at all. So we got those diseases we have to deal with, lots of things we can do to kind of reduce that pressure. And
now, on a normal year, you plant and you hit your timing pretty good on squash. That first 2 or 3 crops of squash that you make, you're not going to have to do anything.
Right.
You're not going to have any pest problems whatsoever. Now, sometimes things can happen beyond our control, but if everything works in your favor, that is the easiest crop to grow because you don't have to do nothing to it. Get your fertility down right. Now, those crops, succession planting,
get into May and June.
You stress them out, then you're going to start having some issues there, especially when you get into July.
Let's talk about pests real quick. So now, the 3 main ones you're going to have on squash are your squash bugs, when everybody talks about the vine borers, which I don't really have an issue with the vine borers.
I don't have much issue either.
Now, pickle worms. We do have pickle worms.
Those, yeah.
And you know pickle worm when you see one, because you go out there, you pick your squash. You don't really notice it when you pick them. You get in the house, washing them off, and you got these little holes been drilled in there, and they just eat in the middle of them. And
make you mad.
They burn. You just might as well throw them out. And once you get them pickle worms, hard to get rid of them because you can't spray that worm if he's sitting inside your squash eating it. So let's talk about a little pest control regime here. You got to start early on this.
You got to start early, especially if you got a history of these problems.
And you can't. No way you can't eradicate squash bugs or vine borers. You can't eradicate them. What you can do is you can minimize or delay that population boom. That population boom is going to happen sooner or later, whether you like it or not. For us, it's usually early August when it just explodes and you can't do anything about it. But if you can delay that and make sure you kill any nymphs out there, any of those juveniles, there ain't a whole lot you can spray to kill the adults.
No, you lost the battle once you get to that point.
But if you can kill those little ones and keep that population at a minimum, you can have some success. And
there's another thing that I really struggle with, is when those plants get done making, get them out of the ground and get rid of them.
That's right.
Sometimes you may think, I'm gonna get me one more mess off of them maybe next week. All you doing is giving those insects a good hotel, the Hilton to stay in. They got plenty of food. Food there. They got plenty of cover to sit there and multiply. So you just creating a host for them to live and multiply on.
You're just giving them a...
Get rid of, just as soon as they start making, get rid of them and move on.
Yeah, them old squash plants is about just like a squash bug brothel.
Man, it's hard.
You don't, you just want to get rid of that thing. So this is kind of my pest control rotation when it comes to squash and cucurbits. And I'll mix one of those fungicides we talked about earlier in every time I spray. So I'll spray this BT with the neem oil 1 week, and then I'll spray this with the takedown the next week. So I'm always putting BT and one of the fungicides in there, and I'll alternate this neem oil and this takedown.
Yeah, neem oil also has some characteristics that will help you against some of the mildews also.
Right, so that's a pretty simple rotation there. All of these are concentrated. It's usually 1 to 2 ounces per gallon of water. So you can get quite a few spray-ins out of these right here.
Normally on your first ones, I'll talk about this again, normally on your first crop too, if you plant early like we do, you can kind of skimp by and not have to worry a whole lot about what he just talked about. But where you better get on your game plan is in that 3rd and 4th succession planting. When you start getting late, you better be getting on your program there then.
Yeah, and don't dilly-dally around getting them. If you in zone 8, especially 8B, you need to be planting them squash this week or next week, getting them in the ground. All right, so if there were any questions or anything we didn't cover summer squash related, put those in the comments below. We'll be glad to get to them on next week's show. We do got some questions from last week's show, and if we answer your question on the show, send us an email to cussserve@hosstools.com, and we'll send you a nice little prize.
Yep, so Leonard, you're going to have to help me with his last name. Leonard.
That's Lavalier.
Lavalier, that's a pretty last name. Leonard Lavalier wants to know, how do you know when the onions are beginning to bub or when the payoff stage begins? I will try growing onions for the first time this fall and do not want to over-fertilize with nitrogen.
I've had several people, since we showed that onion that I brought on the show a few weeks ago, several people have been asking, well, how do I know when it starts bulbing? You'll know. You'll see, it's just like when them tater plants come out of the ground. You'll start seeing that ground cracking around it. And if you need to, you just go out there and pull a couple of them up, and you can see if it's starting to enlarge there at the base. It's pretty obvious. You'll know when it happens. And you'll kind of have a feel when that time's about to come.
Yeah, this year it was around the 20th of February. I feel like it was right around that area.
It is happening for us. So I hadn't put any, hopefully you hadn't either.
Oh, I backed off of it. I learned my lessons.
All right, question number 2 is from Linda McCown, and she says, got any tips on growing corn on a smallish scale? Wind has blown hers down the last 2 years. She even planted in the middle of the garden to try to protect it from the wind.
Well, there ain't nothing no more frustrating than to have grown you a good crop of sweet corn and it come a thunderstorm one afternoon and blow it over. It has happened to me.
Or a hurricane.
Yeah, or a hurricane. It's happened to me numerous times. Now the wind will, the sun will pull it back up sometimes, and sometimes you just have to salvage. It's a common thing that people have that plant small crops of corn. Now, one thing that you can do is make sure that corn is healed well, and that will help somewhat with that. So we heal corn for several different reasons. One of them to keep from suckering out, but one of the main reasons we do this is to keep that stalk supported down at the bottom there. It's hard, it's kind of like taters, it's hard to heal corn too much. So I like to heal my corn a lot. And one of the reasons is to help being stable in there. Also covers up those weeds that's in there, smothers them out. But I heal, and heal on my corn.
Yeah, and I know she said she's on a small scale, but the more rows you can plant side by side, they'll lean on each other a little bit.
But Linda, rest assured, you're not the only ones that struggle with this. We all struggle with it.
Well, now we had some. Well, I forget if that was Hurricane Irma or Michael. We was doing the expo. We had a crop of sweet corn out there, and it was about a little over waist high, and it got just blowed to the ground. And then 2 weeks later, come expo time, it was standing right back up.
It will amaze you how it will stand back up. Okay. It's according to what stage it's in. If it's in that later stage after it started making corn, it won't stand, it's heavier, of course, it won't stand back up as easy as it will when it's younger.
Yeah, I had some that, I think it was that same hurricane, some fall corn that was ready to be picked, and it got blowed over and it was burnt.
Yep. So the next question is from Ohana Strand. It's a winter squash question, Travo. Can I plant winter squash from the same species, Peppo, like delicata, and acorn squash together? Will I end up with some weird kind of squash, or only the seeds from the potential combo? That's a complicated question.
That is a little bit. So there's 3 main species of squash, summer and winter. There's a few oddball ones out there, but 3 main ones. You've got your Cucurbita Peppo, or your C. Peppo. You've got your C. Machata and your C. Maxima. So your Peppo is all your summer squash like we talked about earlier, your butternut, your spaghetti, and your jack-o'-lanterns. Your Machata, or Moscata, however you want to say it, are your butternuts, your Seminole pumpkins, even like your Cherokee tan pumpkins. Okay? And then the last group there, the Maximas, those are like your candy roaster, your Hubbard squash, your kabocha squash. So as long as there are different species that you're planting close to one another, you're fine.
They won't cross-pollinate.
They won't cross-pollinate. The other thing is, if you're planting hybrids like I do, so I'll plant a sunburst squash right beside that Spineless Supreme, right beside that Gold Prize, and I don't have any issues with cross-pollination if I'm planting all those hybrids.
So I can plant my Hickory King and then plant me but I have to plant a Super Sweet right next to it. I don't have to worry about cross-pollination.
And you done switched up talking about corn.
I know, but I'll just get going back here.
Yeah.
But I can't plant Hickory King and Silver Queen. It will cross-pollinate.
Right, yeah. And when we get on the corn show, we'll talk about why those triple sweets are like that. It's not real complicated, but we ain't got time for it today. All right, question number 4 is from Larry Moore. He said, just cut my taters and half of them had a hole in the center. None of them had any signs of rot and were all very juicy when cut. What would cause a hole in the center? And I would preface this, I looked his name up and I don't think he bought his taters from us. I didn't notice any ones I cut up having holes.
Well, I didn't either, but it's not a genetic problem with the potato. It's what they call a physiological problem. It's a problem with the growing of that potato. So if you do have a hollow heart, and that's what they call this right here, hollow heart, it's not a genetics thing that's going to cause a problem if you are planting seed potatoes. A lot of people said it's caused by calcium deficiency. I don't think it is. I think it's caused by a water problem, whether it be too much or a lack of water, inconsistent watering, or a temperature variation that's very strange or to the extremes will cause this. So basically what it is a stress to that plant at an ideal time causing this problem with a hollow heart in potatoes.
Well, you know, inconsistent watering can affect calcium uptake, so it could be a little bit of both there.
Yep.
Could be a little bit of both there. Okay, so if we answer your question, send us an email to CustServe and we'll send you a nice little prize. I hope everyone enjoyed the show tonight. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Give us a big thumbs up. And if you enjoyed tonight's show, I think you'll really like these 2 videos here. We've got one that I did last year on when to harvest winter squash, how you know when they're ready, and another one on Greg's crop of gold prize squash last year that was really good. We'll see you guys next time.